from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton and I'm your host, and tonight we're going to be talking about veterans. Those of you who watch us regularly know we did a show on veterans about a month ago, specifically talking about the veteran treatment docket that they have proposed for Fairfax. Well, we're going to go broader tonight, and we're going to first start off by talking with Lesley MacDonald, who is with the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia. She is the Director of Community Investment, and the Community Foundation has started to do a lot of work in the last 4 or 5 years in the veteran space. So we're going to be talking with Lesley about what's going on and what they're doing. So I want to welcome you and thank you for coming to the show, Lesley.
Thanks for asking me to be here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, for the people who don't know, what is the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia?
Okay. The Community Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to increase philanthropy in the region. And so we work with donors, donor advised funds, scholarship funds, grant-making funds, and I'm trying to get people to be concerned about the community and the social issues that are here and encouraging philanthropy, so giving to the region.
Okay, now for people who don't know, tell me in a couple of words what a donor-advised fund is.
A donor-advised fund is someone who maybe has some wealth to give and they're interested in giving to charity, but they maybe don't want to make all the donations right at the moment. And so a donor-advised fund is a holding place where they can put the funds, they can take their tax deduction at that time, and then they can make decisions about the grants that they'd like to make at their leisure. Sometimes people open donor-advised funds, say as a family fund, where maybe the parents open the fund and then get the children involved in the philanthropy. And what we do at the Community Foundation is we provide a holding place, and then we also can advise them based on what we know about the community of places that they might like to put their money. Depending what their interests are, we can tell them about the good charities that we know about, and then facilitate the gift for them.
Well, the other thing that you do that I think is really important is you all handle the IRS paperwork stuff.
Yes, we do. We handle the paperwork.
That's pretty daunting for people who say, gee, I really would like to give money, but having their own personal foundation with all the attendant problems with boards and filings and all of that kind of stuff can really deter people. And
right.
Donor-advised funds through your organization is one of the ways that they can do it without the big hassle.
Absolutely, and people actually can take a bigger tax break if they put money in a donor-advised fund at a community foundation versus opening their own private foundation. So it's a great alternative, far less paperwork, and giving people more time to pay attention to the giving. The other nice thing about the Community Foundation is it's a holding place for funds for the community. So people often will leave money in their will to the Community Foundation knowing that it will be set up in a grant-making fund to benefit the community forever.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Well, let's talk about the Military Personnel and Families Fund. As I was understanding it, you all set that up back in 2010, and what's the purpose of that? What led you to set that up?
Well, at that time we were making grants, and we have 5 key areas of funding: child and youth, education, health, mental health and aging, and poverty. And the board members at the time felt like with the wars having gone on and the long conflicts overseas, that there was really a need to focus on military families and veterans, particularly in this region when there are so many. And so the purpose of the fund was to support military families and military personnel and veterans in our region. And we raised a small endowment, and going forward now we have a grant-making fund forever to benefit people in the region.
Okay, now who's gotten it? You've distributed about $270,000 since 2010.
Right.
Who are the recipients of those things? What do they do?
Well, all of our grants go directly to nonprofit organizations who then turn around and help people with the grant funding. So we funded organizations like Linden Charities for employment with veterans, Easter Seals, which works with disabled veterans. We've helped Our Military Kids, which works with the children of families that are deployed overseas and provides recreational opportunities. So a whole range of organizations, a service source relating to veterans and employment. Lots and lots of the local charities that are helping veterans have been supported through the fund.
And so if someone out there has a foundation, a nonprofit, not a foundation, they have a nonprofit that does work with veterans, how do they gain access to that money? How can they get a grant? Is there a process for that?
There absolutely is, and every year we normally do 2 or 3 grant cycles per year, so they can just go to our website and look to see when the next grant cycle is coming up, and then the application procedure will be explained on the website.
Okay, terrific. Well then, let's talk about why the Community Foundation thought that you specifically needed to do a study of veterans in Northern Virginia, that sort of segment.
Sure. Well, issuing community studies is something that the Community Foundation does periodically. And the point is to really shed a light on what's going on in the community, to highlight local needs that people may not be aware of. And so that's where the Veterans Report came out. Now, we had opened this Veterans Fund, and through the course of our reading, we really came to understand that veterans today are actually quite a bit different from veterans in the past. Many of them maybe have gone to Afghanistan or Iraq for multiple deployments, placing strain on their families. Also, today's veterans, because it's an all-volunteer army, they tend to be older than veterans in the past. Now, I had read that the average veteran of the Vietnam era was about 19 or 20 when he, because it was usually a man, came out of the service. Whereas today, a more typical veteran is between the ages of 25 and 38. So they're more likely to be married. Many of them have young children. And so the impact on both themselves and their family from the lengthy deployments is just a completely different thing. So we started by wanting to really understand, what was the environment for the veterans? What were they experiencing? And what were their families experiencing? And then as we got into it, we realized that we really lacked local data for how many veterans there were and what their specific needs were. We really had an idea that maybe it was employment and maybe it was mental health, but we didn't really know for sure. And so we started digging in to the data to try to figure it out.
Okay, and somehow Deloitte got involved in this because their name is on the report.
Right.
There's the report, and Deloitte's name is up there.
Absolutely.
How did they get involved?
Well, as I said, we started digging into this, and we found that it was actually really hard to get the data. And we had the good fortune at the time to have employed a military spouse. And so she really knew a lot of channels, but even she couldn't find some of the information that we were looking for. And we were aware of the fact that Deloitte has done some fabulous pro bono work. They have great analysts, and so we approached them about the project. And at the same time, they had actually been talking to the United Way, who had some similar questions. And so we all partnered together with Deloitte, contributing the really wonderful analysis that you see in the study and all the writing and everything on a pro bono basis, which was fabulous. Okay.
So what are some of the key findings in this report? What did you find out once you dug into the data?
Okay, so the report, what it really looks at is both that sort of national data of what we know about veterans and what they're experiencing, and then they took sort of a follow the money approach, where they looked at the funding streams that were supporting veterans in the region, both coming from the federal government and the state government, and then they looked at also all of the services that are currently provided by nonprofits, and tried to figure out, what the gaps were. Now, generally, in a demographic sense, what we learned is that Virginia is actually one of the 4 states with the highest concentration of post-9/11 veterans in the country. So that there's a real, cohort of veterans here that are from the post-9/11 generation.
Now, is that Virginia, or is that specifically Northern Virginia?
Now, that's Virginia as a whole, but we also did find that there are 36,000, give or take, veterans of post-9/11 veterans in Northern Virginia. 36,000 is a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
And in the big picture, what we learned about those veterans is in the big picture, they're actually doing quite well. We found that veterans were more likely to be more highly educated than the general population. More of them have at least some college or a bachelor's degree. We found that their unemployment was actually quite low for veterans in Northern Virginia, about 2%, which is better than elsewhere in the country and also better than the general population in Northern Virginia.
Is that because we have so many defense contractors and people who would want to employ veterans, do you think?
I think so. I think that the region has a very robust economy, and I think that there's a demand for people coming out of the military with the technical skills and the expertise and the knowledge. So in the big picture, it's quite good. There are also veterans in Northern Virginia are less likely to be living in poverty. That in many ways that was quite reassuring. But what the study did not do was point us into one thing that said, oh, we have to invest in that. It wasn't homelessness necessarily, it wasn't employment necessarily, because when we also looked at the resources that were dedicated to that, we found that there's a lot of organizations and there's a lot of services that are available. So that was a really good finding. But what we did find that is so that's the macro level, the big picture. On the person-to-person level, there were still people who were having difficulty with transition and falling through the cracks. And we tried to, speculate about what the reason for that was. And at the same time, we consulted with what other communities around the country were finding. And what in many cases we're finding is that the array of services that are available are very complex. And so it's very difficult to navigate your way through that as a veteran, particularly if you happen to be in a crisis. And so it's hard to know, where you should go or what the benefit might be available to you. And so that people really need help navigating. And that the most comfortable thing for a veteran trying to navigate the service system, what actually works best is sort of a peer navigation, if they can work with someone who understands military culture, because there really is a divide. Military culture, it's a strong and proud tradition, and it contributes greatly to our society. But when you leave it abruptly, it can just be a little bit overwhelming. It's just very different. And so if human service organizations aren't familiar with how to and don't understand how to work with military personnel or veterans, there can be sort of a gap there, leaving veterans not very well fulfilled in terms of their services. So that cultural competence was an important finding as well.
So where are you going to go with this? It sounds like the veterans are in pretty good shape. What's the next step for the Community Foundation?
Okay, so there was really three things: the navigation, the cultural competence, and then the final finding had to do with all of the services that were available, but not necessarily talking to each other. And that's a really important point, because if you pick up the phone and you call one organization, but your need is not exactly what they do, they're not necessarily going to be able to hook you up with the right organization or the right person. And so what we really felt is that there's a need for all these organizations to do a better job of talking to each other. So it's a service coordination piece. And then we also, again, looked at successful models around the country, and that's really the same conclusion that many other communities have come to. So we recently released a request for proposal for an organization that would be able to start to take that big picture work, do the big picture work about serving veterans in the community by trying to connect all the different services together and have everybody work together, so that you as a veteran, no matter where you access the services, you get the same messages. And hopefully you get connected to a peer navigator who can actually walk you through what you might be eligible for and where you can find the services that you need at the time.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for coming and taking time to explain this. Go to the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia website. You can read the report. It's got tons of footnotes. Thank you so much for coming, Lesley.
Thanks for having me.
Still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
we're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host, and we are talking about veterans in Northern Virginia. And we have another guest who's got a couple of different things going, and we're going to try and cover as many of them as we can tonight. And her name is Mary Keeser. Now, some of you will know Mary because she was crowned or inaugurated or something. Lady Fairfax at Large by Chairman Sharon Bulova recently, and I saw it, and I expected the sash and the tiara or something tonight, but she's modest. She did not wear them. Maybe next time. But the reason she's here is not because she is Lady Fairfax at Large, but because she is an military veteran. We're going to ask her what she did. She is the founder of the National Capital Area Veterans Service Foundation, which she founded just in 2013. But she is also the founder and chairman of America's Adopt a Soldier, which she founded in 2009. We're going to talk about that. And then on the other side, she is also on the governing board of the Fairfax Falls Church Partnership to Prevent and End Homelessness. And we're going to talk about what that group is doing to help the homeless veterans in Fairfax County. So that's what we're going to do. I want to thank you for coming, Mary. I'm glad you could.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Make it find us.
This forum is wonderful for the veterans organizations that continue to provide services, and we thank you for that. And I did note that you had a flag that was prominently displayed in your lobby, so thank you for that.
There we go. We are good. So let's talk about your background, because you served in the military. You were in the Army, right?
I did.
Okay, so how long, what did you do, that kind
I'm
of good
fifth
stuff?
generation military, coming from a military family and being deployed. We've learned so much through the years. My brother is retired military. He was in the Marine Corps. He retired out in California. He still continues to serve. My other brother retired from the military. He went to Fort Carson, Colorado, became a civilian and deployed twice with 4th ID from there. My father was a first commissioned warrant officer in the United States Army, and he served for over 34 years. My mother was a gray lady and a volunteer, so we've really volunteered since we were little itty bitty. My sister's a nurse today, still at Fort Campbell, so we've continued to serve our entire lives. I left the service here, retired here in the Virginia area. I've been in the Virginia area for over 30 years and began volunteering when I was at Fort Belvoir, actually. They started the Route 1 shelter back in the 80s, I think. Just started the GED class there and started pushing around pots and pans in the kitchen, and just started supporting Fairfax County from there, and just haven't looked back.
Excellent. So now, during what time frame were you actually in the Army? Are you one of the Iraq-Afghani folks, or are you in an earlier period?
It was an earlier period, thank you for asking. It was an earlier period. But as we continued to serve, and as I left the service and know so many people here, and started my network, my professional network and personal network, and that's the way we look at it, is being able to provide from our network that we have. We've serviced and continue to serve those from all the services, because as you know, our Vietnam veterans, that's our largest homeless population. I guess we'll talk about that in a little while. But knowing soldiers and service members that I grew up with that have been and are continuing to serve now, and that have retired or left the service and are now running the industries in the area. So I'm very fortunate to have just some incredible mentors, both that are currently in the service and those that are in industry running the larger corporations that we team with, and that continue to have corporate core values and give back to our veterans.
Because you have your professional life is Key Enterprise Management Strategic Solutions.
I do.
Woman-owned, service-disabled, small business.
I do. When you start your own company, you walk into a room, as we're all trained in the military, and you have this big whiteboard sitting in front of you. So I started my company by looking at, with my initials, and Key Enterprise Management Strategic Solutions started out with Keeser, L, and Mary on a board, and I had to go from there. So it was literally days and days filling up the whiteboard, and started out with Key Enterprise Management Solutions, but that corporation was already taken in Virginia. So I had to put on the second S there to get the company started, and that's a true story. So our company provides, we're a government services contractor, and we provide basically internet solutions, turnkey solutions, enterprise management, information technology is what we provide.
Okay, so in 2009, you decide to set up this America's Adopt a Soldier Foundation. So what is that? Why did you decide to do this?
It more decided for me than I it, and that's something that if you love to do what you do for a living, it comes to you naturally. Having serviced the community for so many years and met so many wonderful, wonderful people who are, again, my mentors today, we were very successful, and I was very successful at identifying the requirement and putting the resources towards the requirement. So as individuals needed housing or transportation or extra subsistence, help with their rent, or even just a place to put their head down, jobs, especially in training, they were coming to me constantly. And we actually started out with a lot of care packages that we're putting together for overseas. I think our largest care packing in Fairfax County was over 1,000 care packages, and we had close to 1,000 volunteers, and that was an amazing, amazing day. So having done all that and being able to give back to the community, I think that's one of the things that we continue to do through our different services. So everything was coming at us. We needed to narrow the scope to a few mission areas, and our 4 mission areas today, we've more focused on our homeless and at-risk veterans in jobs and job training, which we've been very successful with some local partnerships with that. We continue our care packages. We're a national program. Our goal is 100,000. We still have 100,000 troops deployed today in various positions. And then our outreach. We're constantly putting out in front of the public what our issues are so that they're informed. And it is a matter of informing and the community of giving back. So we have our outreach, our care packages. We also have a computer program that we're very pleased with Microsoft and Dell. We've had that program going for about 5 years. We started out in a closet at Walter Reed. It was a supply closet, and we started the old desktops. We said, okay, we need to go mobile because we're seeing more from the Iraqi war with wheelchairs and wheelchairs and canes. So we started giving them laptops through our partnership. They were coming back in 6 or 7 pieces. So it's okay, we have to do some training. And the first training we actually had service members coming back saying that this is no fault of their own. How do I turn it back on for the power? So we learned through our first class on a pool table and in a closet to actually have a formal program. It's a certified Microsoft Academy. Dell provides the laptops, and our next class is actually at Fort Gordon in August. We do have adaptive technology that we go bedside, and the government actually informs us of who the students are. So we go bedside with the laser-mounted head sights and voice recognition software. And we actually get them going on social networking first. And then if they finish that, as soon as they get out of the hospital or move out of the ward, then they go into the formal class. They get certified, they get Microsoft certifications rather, they keep the laptop, and they're better served going forward into the job market or for promotions within their job. So the first time that you see a service member who's been in his room for about a week and a half, these guys have 1 or 2 surgeries a week. It's very incredible. You walk in a room thinking you're going to motivate them, and they motivate you. But when you can allow them that window to the outside where they're actually connecting to Facebook for the first time without nothing against their mother or anything else or their relatives.
I hope not.
The first time that they actually can connect to Facebook on their own with a laser mounted device or voice recognition software, it's just humbling. It truly is humbling to be able to do what we do.
And what is this laser-mounted device? I have no idea what that all is involved.
We bought what they could break, so we got the highest technology that was available to us at the time. And because they're amputees and don't have use of their arms, what it is it's a laser device that fixes to their forehead. And since this is one of the first ones that we brought out to the service members, their relative, we actually worked with their relatives and their caregivers, So they went out and they bought these different devices that they could put around their head. And his wife had bought, it was a pink headband. And you would have thought, I mean, that was a no-go. So we went with the black one, and we just kind of moved over the flashlight that was in front, and we connected the device there. So he could use his head as if it was a mouse. So he could navigate the site, and the laser would connect to the computer. And it was just, he picked it up in a matter of a couple minutes. It took us a couple days. So he was navigating all through that, and we continue to communicate with him today, actually. It's been a couple years.
So how is it that, I mean, this sounds like a big national program.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage to do this? Because a lot of people have great ideas
about. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. It's relationships. I really truly believe as a core value, and I really believe that it's a network capital, and relationship capital, and my knowledge capital that I've been very fortunate to be able to amass over these years in the area, and still have those relationships today. That using those to give back is a core value. It's a core value, and it's something that you should do as a community. When you're in the military, you're surrounded by your community. You're immersed in your community. You go to your base, you're in the community. The National Guard and Reserves, that's a little bit different, and we're actively seeking outreach programs to be able to ensure that we stay connected with them. But when you come home and you're in the Guard and Reserves, you do have that disconnect. So that's one of the purposes for us is to reach out, and for me to be able to use my network. I consider myself a weaver. I just take the threads of our community, and we are a 100% volunteer organization. Our volunteers are threads of compassion, commitment, intelligence, and creativity. They're laughter and joy. And I just take these threads and weave them together for our service blanket. Whether it's a care packing, whether it's moving a homeless veteran into one of their first homes that they have, whether they're coming from a car or in the woods. It's just amassing the volunteers who are gracious enough and kind enough to be able to give back, because we only do what we do through the kindness and compassion of our volunteers.
So how does somebody who's watching the show saying, you know, I could do that, I could help. Yeah. Well, how do they get a hold of you? What should they do to do that?
Oh, here's my number now.
That would flash it up on the screen, right?
No, that would not be a good thing. Our website, thank you very much for asking. Our website is America's, and I had the foresight to patent and register that. So there's really only one America's Adopt a Soldier out there. Our web designer, Rob, is a rock star, and he's actually putting up another tab on our site for volunteers. But you can see our events on the website. Also, on one of the tabs on the website, there's a contact. You can just click on there. And if I may, to any prospective sponsor that's there, we're only allowed to do and able to do what we do through your kindness of donation. So we do need donations, and we have 2 events coming up, if I may. We have our golf tournament.
Let's do that after the break, because we're going to go to a break now, and I don't want to cut you off. And so when we come back, we'll start with the events. So stay with us.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. This is Inside Scoop Virginia, and I'm Bettina Lawton, and we are talking about Northern Virginia veterans and what's out there for them. We started off with the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia, and now we are talking to Mary Keeser, who is involved in all kinds of things. And so we're going to talk about, when we left, we were just about to talk about some of the events that America's Adopt a Soldier is doing. So tell us about those.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Well, since we only have 2 fundraisers a year, and that's our 5K run and our golf tournament, we actually have those right around the corner. So, and it's timely. We couldn't convince Tiger Woods to stay, but he had to go back. But shucks, we almost
He wasn't doing so well anyway. He didn't win, you know.
Last year we actually had our golf tournament flyer in his hands, and he was going to come, but if you recall, he got sick and didn't show up. But our golf tournament is at Osprey Golf Course on the 15th of July. We have Pags, who's on our board, Mike Paglione. He played with the New York Yankees. He's one of our honorary board members. And he's really, really great on the grassroots with the community when we take our veterans out to the ball game, literally. So the golf tournament is the 15th of July at Osprey Golf Course, and go online into our events, and you'll see it right there. All of the funds from this is going to be used towards our Task Force Smile, where we're putting a smile on every critically ill military child that's in the hospitals. And it's in a program that we've been working now for about a year. Mm-hmm. We're going in and making sure that a child who is in the hospital receives a toy. And we're working with the facilities to brighten up the areas, similar to what we actually had a project at Augusta International Airport, where we walked in, and I was on travel, and walked in the room and shook my head and said, this is not a military family lounge. This is not a place for them to come in and relax. Somebody should do something. I left. I came back 3 months later, and when I came back 3 months later, I walked into the room and it was the same. So I went and stood in the middle of the room, closed my eyes and said, be the change you want to see. And about 4 or 5 months later, I contacted the installation. We had one of the classes pick it up for their class project, talked to the garrison commander, to just immersed in the community, I guess the idea of making sure that this lounge was suitable for our military families. And they just jumped right up to it, got with a local furniture store, Ashley, with Best Buy. So we were able to take it down to the studs, brand new carpet, paint, TV, lounge chairs, a little kids play area, which I was pretty adamant about, everything. And so it's in the Augusta International Airport. So the same thing here is what we're trying to do with Task Force Smile, is we want to go in there and make that environment. A lot of them are worn and used. So we have 5 major hospitals we're going to go to as pilot programs. We're starting here first, and then a total of 39. So we'll have book nooks, and we're doing Under the Sea is our theme. And so we're making it bigger or brighter, and just giving a smile to the kids. So that's for the 15th of July. That's our golf tournament. And our 5-10K, I was warned not to call it a fun run anymore.
Really? Why? Because it's not?
Well, it's not fun. It's not fun to some people. They came back. They were a little, yeah. So it's at Fairfax. It's at Lake Fairfax, and it is a diverse trail because it starts out on the pavement. It goes to the gravel pavement. I understand there's a few routes that you have to hop over or so, but it is a 5-10K walk run. And our youngest awardee last year, you could go on our website and see the picture. She was 8 years old, and it was a walk. It took a long time, but she got a medal for that. But our goal on the on the 13th of September, at Lake Fairfax, is 500 warm winter coats for our homeless veterans. They must have the tags on them, and 500 runners. So we actually participate with DC VA, and there's almost 84 or 83,000 veterans assigned there today, and that's from Northern Virginia, Maryland, and DC. So there's several thousand homeless veterans that they serve through their program. And we're just making a little bit of a way here, I guess, with their coats, because our goal is 3,000. But if we can pick up 5,000 coats and make sure they have the cleaner's tags on them, we've got a warehouse donated to us, and we'll have the little wardrobe bags so we can set them up. And of course we need volunteers, and we have a volunteer, we'll have a volunteer link on our site. We're always looking for volunteers. The golf tournament, we have a volunteer requirement, and of course all our packings. And we have thousands and thousands of volunteers out there in Fairfax County that I would like to personally thank you for giving of your time and your energies so that we can accomplish what we do here today.
All right, so you don't have to, you can volunteer, you don't have to play golf, and you don't have to actually be able to run. You could do some other things to help.
Absolutely, you can, and you can even sponsor, and I'll drive your cart around for you if you're going to be the sponsor. Absolutely, and a lot of what we do is donations in kind, and that is the subsistence, and whether it's furniture, again, or a car, whether it's a home for our homeless veterans. But you definitely can volunteer. We need help at the registration desk. We need help out on the course for the golf tournament in particular. We need somebody to, of course, to drive the carts. So we actually, I think we're looking for about 12 volunteers. But we'll take more volunteers.
Absolutely.
And keep coming back, because we have a dedicated core of volunteers. Absolutely.
Okay, well, let me ask you briefly about the National Capital Area Veterans Service Foundation, because you just set that up. So what's the difference between the Adopt a Soldier and the new one? What's the difference?
Thanks for asking. Again, we've been being in the area for so long and doing these programs for more than just the start of America's Adopt a Soldier, because as you see, that was formalized in 2009. But we've been working in the area in Fairfax County, Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. Since the 80s. So I was approached about 2 years ago or so to basically narrow the scope of what we're doing. And the National Capital Area Veteran Service Foundation is just to provide services to veterans. Where America's Adopt a Soldier is, as you know, we provide care packages to our deployed overseas. Even our service members, for example, we had a service member, unfortunately, he was recovering at Fort Belvoir. And he came down with a very aggressive disease, wanted to make it home to see his son's last football game, and it was in North Carolina. They could not turn it around fast enough. They reached out to us, and they have a small core group of organizations. So I'm going to say America's Adopt a Soldier, but they reached out to the organizations. And since we were teamed with and have a marvelous relationship with Paxton Van Lines, we actually asked them if they could move this service member. He needed to this was a Monday, he needed to get back to North Carolina, to see his son's last football game. And we were able to do that. They were just fantastic. We marshaled it up. Within 24 hours, we were out at Fort Belvoir, loaded up the van. He and his mom were there. They got in the car, and by that, because they had to drive back, I think by Thursday, he was home. Saturday, he saw his last son's football game. So doing things like that, we'll still do it with America's Adopt a Soldier, but with the Veterans Association for National Capital Veteran Service Foundation, we're going to serve just the veterans and their families in our areas. And that is through housing, that's through veteran support, that's through the homeless veterans and their family. So that's working with VARSH, with VA, and just servicing their needs and awareness, because a lot of the veterans don't know what benefits that they have, and it's a matter of reaching out. I was going to bring my but BlackBerries are great. I'm in technology, I understand that, but over 90% of our homeless veterans are Vietnam, and a lot of them don't or can't afford a cell phone. So the outreach is paper, and it's people and paper.
Well, how much then, to sort of just pivot here in our last 4 minutes or so, you're on the governing board for the Fairfax Falls Church Partnership to Prevent and End Homelessness. So what are they doing with respect to veterans? Are they doing anything in that space?
They are. It's a good question. Thank you. And I was asked to join the board a few years ago, and I made it pretty clear that I'd be looking out for our veterans, because the governance board's mission is to oversee the funding and the programs that are offered and are used to support our homeless in Fairfax County. And today we have over 1,500 homeless. And of that 1,500 today accounted for is about 55 veterans. But within that, we know that there are a lot of veterans that aren't accounted for because they're just not reporting themselves. So what we're doing is, as far as Fairfax County is doing for our veterans, is outreach, working with VA and or VA, BARSH, and HUD for the housing vouchers, looking for housing. And as part of our, I guess as part of our mandate and mission with the governance board, is to look at the holistic problem, or look at the holistic program within our homelessness, and have intervention, identify early, look at what the root cause is, and finding affordable housing. I think the average rent in Fairfax County is about $1,400 a month. Wow. And that is pretty high. So with our homeless veterans, working with them, with VARSH and HUD for low-income housing in our area, what we do in America's Adopted Soldier is we get the furniture. So we've been very fortunate to team up with a major corporation who has opened the door to their warehouse for us. And they've been very gracious at that. We've also are working with VA, DCVA, with Matt Carey. He's the director of DCVA. They have a warehouse, 30,000 square foot warehouse that we're going to utilize. There's 25 offices next to it. So our plan is to have those offices to work with industry. It's going to be an internship. They'll be paid. We'll use the warehouse to bring in furniture. We'll hire from those interns. So we'll probably hire 3 or 4 veterans to run the warehouse. But in addition to that, we'll train veterans that are homeless and at risk. And this is part of the other foundation. They're homeless and at risk, to go out and get jobs. So it'll be an internship till they'll have a stipend. We'll take in about 35 or 40 students initially. There's 25 offices. We're going to tear down the last 4 and have that as a children's development area, so we can talk to them about nutrition and health, and so they have a good path forward as well. Because if you're a homeless veteran or at risk, you're not going to come to training and leave your child in a shelter or in a car or at a friend's house, perhaps, that you're sleeping on the couch. You want to bring them with you. And just think about, we'll provide the transportation and the conversations that would be instilled about looking forward, rather than where am I going to go, tomorrow to get a meal, or how am I going to do this. They're actually looking forward to the future and having the home and having the job. So that's another huge project that we're working on. So that foundation, again, is specifically for the veterans in the National Capital Area, which includes Northern Virginia and Maryland. And we're really excited about that.
Wow. Well, there's certainly a whole lot that you are doing, and hopefully the government in Fairfax County will take advantage of all of your connections and your networks and the threads, and help.
We're doing that now. Absolutely.
Help get them put together and the homes put together for these veterans, so they have some place to go.
Absolutely. It is truly my privilege to continue to serve and to work with the volunteers that we have in our area. We couldn't do it without our volunteers, and thank you again. And it is truly my honor to continue to serve this great country of ours. And that's what I believe in.
Well, I thank you very much for taking
you're
time,
welcome.
because
Thank
you
you for
obviously are
having
doing
us.
so much to come on the show tonight.
Thank you.
And I want you to stay with us. We're going to talk about the VFW next.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, I'm your host, and we're going to be talking about the VFW. We're going to be talking about student veterans. I've got 3 fabulous veterans who have joined me to do this, and I'm going to introduce them all. They are all incredibly impressive. So Gary Ketch is to my immediate left, and he retired from the Navy in 2007 after 30 years of service, active duty and reserve forces. He was recalled to duty in 2004 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Noble Eagle. And while he was deployed at that time, he joined what is called the oldest and largest organization of war veterans, which is, of course, the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, having earned his qualification for membership in the North Atlantic submarine operations during the Cold War service in 1979 to 1983. In 2008, he joined VFW Post 7327 in Springfield, where he served as the post commander from 2010 to 2014. And in recognition for all of the great work that he was doing at the post, they won the All-State Post, and then they won the All-American Post, so they've got lots of awards. And now Gary is the 2014 elected VFW Virginia District 10 Commander. So thank you for taking the time to come on and talk, Gary.
Thank you for having me.
Then we have, next to Gary, we have Jacobo Flores. He was served for 4 years in the Marine Corps, including a combat tour in Iraq. He is the commander of VFW Post 8469, which is in Fairfax Station. He is in his last year at George Mason. He's getting his degree in civil engineering, and I know you came here from your job down in Arlington, so I appreciate you coming up here, Jacobo.
Thank you.
And then we have Walter Sweeney with us, and Walter also served 4 years in the Marine Corps. He did a combat tour in Afghanistan. He is the Senior Vice Commander at VFW Post 8469. He is the Judge Advocate for the VFW District 10. He's a member of the VFW State Student Veterans Committee, and he's the outgoing president of the GMU Student Veterans Society. So, busy fella, and I appreciate you coming in, Walter.
Thanks for having me.
So let me go back to this oldest and largest comment about the VFW. And I actually had someone, when I mentioned that the VFW guys were going to be coming on, say to me, what is that? And I was kind of shocked. My dad was a commander in the VFW, so I've always known what it was. But what is it for those people who don't know? You obviously have to be in a foreign war, right?
Well, a foreign war, or having earned an expeditionary medal, which doesn't necessarily mean you were in conflict, but you were in zone. Okay. And there are some other lesser-known qualifications, such as being on a deterrent patrol for SSBNs.
What's an SSBN?
Submarine ballistic missile submarine.
Oh, sounds great.
So there are many ways to join, but essentially it's being on the front line in some fashion. Okay. Earning a combat action ribbon, earning a deployment expeditionary medal.
Mm-hmm. So how big is the VFW? When it says it's the biggest, what are we talking about here?
Well, right now we have about 1.9 million members between our VFW members and our auxiliaries. Mm-hmm. We have nearly 7,000 posts worldwide. That's within the 50 states, Europe, and Asia, mm-hmm. Japan. And our members, the posts range anywhere from 25 members to, I believe, our largest post right now is at 3,200 out in the Midwest.
Wow.
We actually have the third largest post in the world here in Dale City with about 2,500 members.
Wow.
So.
Oh, okay. So is the big difference between the American Legion and the VFW the foreign combat zone experience, or what's the difference between the two organizations?
As far as qualifications go, yes.
Okay.
There are some slight differences in mission. The VFW focuses more on combat veterans and their families and the after effects of war. The American Legion is a little broader, serving all veterans in many different ways. When you look at what we do, it's fairly close, just some slightly different focus.
So what is it that the VFW does, and has the demographics changed a lot with the most recent wars? Because frankly, I looked at the annual report, and you got a lot of old white guys.
Yes.
Now, the two guys at the other end are not old and aren't uniformly white here, but it seemed like somebody needs to start taking better pictures, because otherwise everybody just thinks you're a bunch of old white guys.
And that's one of the stereotypes that we fight.
Right.
You know, when I speak to people about joining the reserves, one of the typical reactions that I get is, well, I'm not retired yet. And that has nothing to do with it. From the day you step on the battlefield or earn the qualification, you're eligible for membership, whether you're 19 or 90.
Okay.
So, and yeah, the demographics have changed quite a bit. The folks coming back from World War II were of a type of demographic to join an organization and participate and the camaraderie. Today's veterans are a little more fast-paced than the veterans of old, in that, you know, they like to see things happen quickly. So we've seen actually in the VFW a decline in membership in recent years, but we're working hard to change that perception of the organization to attract the younger crowd, the younger veterans, because we do a lot of very good work within the military.
Well, what do you do to attract them? I mean, these guys are obviously, they got attracted. How come you guys joined the VFW?
Well, I have several points to that. New generation coming in. There's an influx at George Mason University of veterans going back to school. And because of the proximity to our VFW post in Fairfax Station, we get that generations coming to visit us. We do functions for them, kind of an open house type thing, invite them to cookouts, make them feel comfortable at home, welcome back at home feeling, and also go out to the university. The VFW back in 2008, when I first met the VFW, they were there present at George Mason during a 5K run. So that's how I got involved into the VFW, and then became a member, and then got involved into the officer position. So we're trying to make it more attractive for all the other generations coming in through George Mason especially.
Okay, now, Walter, you're obviously the current president, outgoing, probably counting the days, president of the GMU Student Veteran Society. So how does the society, or does the society interact with Jacobo's post, or is it broader? Is multiple posts? How does this all play?
So the Veteran Society at Mason, we have a very strong relationship with VFW 8469 and Fairfax Station specifically, but also with the district as a whole. The students who are going to Mason, the student veterans, don't just live in Fairfax. And while, of course, for our own reasons, with our post, we of course want them to join ours, we also say, you know, there are posts closer to your home, you know, reach out to them, go to them. I mean, as the outgoing president and also the senior vice of the post, I mean, there's obviously a connection there, being an officer in both positions. And our incoming president at the Veteran Society is actually the service officer at our post as well. Okay. So we try to maintain a very close relationship there. And one of the key things that we've found success in is giving the student vets and the younger vets who come to our post the opportunity to really take ownership of something. If they want to lead a committee, if they want to take an officer position, we try to make that available to them so that they can really have, it's not just a post, it's their post.
So at the district level, Gary, is there a concerted effort to try and get, I know Walter is the judge advocate, whatever that is, but Is there a concerted effort for younger veterans to have positions, beyond just their own individual post?
Yes, every post is desiring to bring in the younger veterans because we understand that those of us who are in positions of authority now within the organization are really only the keepers of the organization for the next group of veterans coming up. Mm-hmm. So our population within the organization is aging. We have younger veterans who are coming out of conflict and are eligible. They need to take positions within the organization, leadership roles, and make the organization theirs. Mm-hmm. Just because things were done one way in the past or there was a focus does not mean that that can't change for the future.
That does not sound very military to me. I thought the military, you did this and you did this, you only did that.
The organization has to serve.
I'm very open here.
Yeah, well, the organization has to serve the needs of the members, and the needs have changed.
So how do you identify the needs of the newer members? Do you survey people? Do you just have focus groups? How do you know what these guys need?
Some of it is intuitive, but most recently within the state of Virginia, we recently conducted a survey of veterans. We haven't seen the results yet, but it was an online survey that we tried to distribute to as many veterans within the state as we could to ask them, what is it that you expect from the VFW? What do you think the VFW does? How could we help you better? What are you looking for out of such of an organization so that we can better adapt to ensure that the younger veterans want to come to the organization, take possession of it, and maintain it for the next group of veterans that are going to come through.
Okay. Well, let me ask you in terms of the George Mason and the students. I mean, you guys are obviously not 18-year-olds sitting in the freshman English class here. How does all of that work? Are there issues on the campuses because you've got the older veterans showing up to go to college? I mean, you got a great GI Bill that got passed, in I guess 08 or somewhere around in there. How does that play out on the campuses?
So on big campuses like George Mason, I believe, is the second highest percentage of student veterans or number of student veterans in Virginia. Mm-hmm. So at a school like that, the transition is a little bit easier just because you'll take classes and you'll see somebody else with a beard or, wearing their unit t-shirt or, tattoos. I mean, the various signaling methods, that we have. So it's easier at a school like that. I came to Mason in August of 2011. And within 2 weeks, I was tied in with a large group of student veterans on campus and have been obviously connected with them ever since. At the smaller schools, it is more difficult because there's just fewer of us. So there's a sense of loneliness that comes in. I have several friends who got out of the Marine Corps around the same time I did, who are at some of those smaller schools. And they say, I'm sitting in class with 18 and 19-year-olds, and they're talking about prom, and I'm thinking, well, when you were at prom, I was in a firefight. Right. So there's not a lot, that they have in common. So bridging that gap is difficult because we are still students. We're veterans, but we're also students. Mm-hmm. So trying to join in with the campus can be difficult at times, and it's really a matter of finding those like minds on campus and kind of making your own way.
Well, I want to thank you guys because we got about 19 seconds to close this out. I want to thank you guys for coming over because there's obviously a lot that the VFW does, and those folks in the smaller schools, obviously, hopefully they'll go find the local VFW post and meet some like minds there.
Join the VFW.
Thank the VFW. Thanks for participating today.
Thanks for having me.